Whole time, Belgium. January 29th, 1945. The light is already fading over a village buried in snow. In the yard behind a stone farmhouse, a German lieutenant is having the best 20 minutes of his war. Around him stand 90 soldiers. His soldiers now. Most of them were prisoners of the Americans less than half an hour ago. Disarmed, defeated, waiting to be marched to some camp behind the lines. Then his patrol slipped into the village wearing white snow capes, jumped the guards, and turned the whole situation inside out. Now the rifles are back in German hands. 4 American paratroopers kneel in the snow with their fingers laced behind their helmets. And out beyond the farmhouse, an entire American company is scattered through the village, clearing buildings, facing the wrong direction, with no idea that 90 armed men are forming up behind them. The lieutenant is giving orders. Machine guns here, riflemen along the wall. When the signal comes, they will tear through the American rear and turn a lost battle into a slaughter. Then he hears boots crunching in the snow. An American walks around the corner of the farmhouse and stops. He's small, 5'5", maybe 140 pounds. First sergeant's stripes on his sleeve. A Thompson submachine gun slung over his shoulder. He takes in the whole scene in about 2 seconds. His guards on their knees. 90 enemies where 80 prisoners should be. Weapons everywhere. The lieutenant moves fast. He crosses the yard, rams the muzzle of his machine pistol into the American's stomach, and screams the order to surrender. The American doesn't raise his hands. He doesn't reach for his weapon. He starts to laugh. Not a nervous chuckle. A real laugh. Head back, shoulders shaking. The kind of laugh you'd hear at a bar, not in a farmyard full of enemy rifles. The lieutenant screams again. The American laughs harder. 45 seconds from now, that lieutenant will be dead in the snow. 20 of his men will be dead beside him. 24 more will be bleeding. The rest, more than 40 armed soldiers, will throw their rifles down and put their hands in the air. Surrendering to a handful of Americans, they outnumbered 10-1. The man doing the laughing is First Sergeant Leonard Funk Jr. of the 82nd Airborne Division. By the end of the war, he will be the most decorated paratrooper the United States has ever produced. And what he does in this farmyard will be written up as one of the most improbable individual actions in the history of the Medal of Honor. But you can't understand what happens in the next 45 seconds by standing in that farmyard. You have to go back past Belgium, past Holland, past the night skies over Normandy, all the way to a smoke-stained mill town on a river in Pennsylvania. Part 1. The Clerk, Braddock Township, Pennsylvania. August 27, 1916. Leonard Alfred Funk Jr. is born into a world that runs on fire and iron. This is steel country. The Monongahela River Valley east of Pittsburgh, where Andrew Carnegie built the mills that armored America. The furnaces never go cold. The sky glows orange at night. Soot settles on windowsills, on laundry lines, on everything. Men walk to the mills before dawn and come home after dark, and the whole town lives by the rhythm of the shift whistle. Leonard grows up small. He'll top out at 5 feet 5 inches, and he'll never weigh much more than 140 pounds. In a town full of men who wrestle steel for a living, that matters. Nobody looks at Leonard Funk and sees a fighter. Then the bottom falls out of everything. The Great Depression hits the Steel Valley like a hammer. Mills cut shifts, then cut men. Families that had never missed a meal start missing plenty of them. Leonard finishes high school in 1934, right into the teeth of it. College isn't a conversation anyone in his position gets to have. He needs work, and he takes what he can find. Clerical jobs, paper ledgers, filing. Quiet, careful, invisible work. And here's the thing most people miss about men like Funk. That kind of work teaches you something combat schools can't. It teaches you patience, it teaches you to keep your head down, keep track of details, and finish the job in front of you, no matter how tedious it gets. Nobody applauds a clerk. You do the work because the work needs doing. Remember that. It's going to matter in a Belgian farmyard 11 years later, June 1941. Europe is burning, France has fallen, London is being bombed, and in Pennsylvania, a draft notice arrives with Leonard Funk's name on it. He's 24 years old, he reports for induction, and you can almost picture the Army examiner looking him over, short, slight, a clerk's hands, and mentally filing him where the Army files small men with office experience, behind a typewriter, far from any front. Leonard Funk has other plans. Somewhere in those first months in uniform, he hears about a new kind of soldier the Army is building. Men who drop out of airplanes behind enemy lines. Men who fight cut off, outnumbered, and surrounded. Because being surrounded is the whole point of the job. Paratroopers. And the small, quiet clerk from Braddock raises his hand and volunteers. Part 2. Men who fall out of the sky. In 1941, the American Airborne is barely an idea. A few test platoons, a few visionary officers arguing that vertical envelopment, dropping infantry from the sky, is the future of war. Most of the army thinks they're insane. You want to fly soldiers over the enemy's head, throw them out the door, and have them land in the middle of hostile territory with whatever they can carry? Yes, that's exactly what they want. Because the concept demands so much, the airborne can't take just anyone. Every man is a volunteer. Every man knows what he's signing up for. If the paratroopers ever go to war, they will fight with no tanks behind them, no supply line, no easy way home. The men on either side of you are all you have. Jump school is built to find out who breaks. Weeks of physical punishment, running everywhere, push-ups for breathing wrong, instructors whose full-time job is convincing you to quit. Then the towers. Then the real thing. Standing in the open door of a C-47 with the wind roaring past at over 100 miles an hour, the ground 1,200 feet down, and every instinct you've ever had screaming at you to grab the doorframe and refuse. Half the candidates wash out. The little clerk from Pennsylvania doesn't. Funk pins on his silver jump wings and is assigned to Company C, 1st Battalion, 508th Parachute Infantry Regiment, a brand new outfit training in the American South, a regiment that will come to be known as the Red Devils. In late 1943, they cross the Atlantic and are attached to the 82nd Airborne Division, the All-Americans, a division that has already jumped into Sicily and fought through Italy. Inside the 508th, Funk is an oddity. He's 27 when the regiment prepares for its first combat jump. The riflemen around him are teenagers and 21-year-olds who call anyone his age Pops. He's the shortest man in most rooms he walks into. But rank in the airborne has a way of finding the men who deserve it. The kids notice that Funk never rattles. He doesn't shout much. He doesn't showboat. He just knows the answer, knows the plan, knows where everyone is supposed to be. And when things get chaotic, his voice is the calm one. By the spring of 1944, he's wearing sergeant stripes and leading men who trust him completely. They're going to need that trust because the regiment's first jump won't be a training drop over the Carolina Pines. It will be into occupied France in the dark on the night the Allies bet everything. Part 3. Normandy. The Long Walk Home. Just after midnight, June 6th, 1944. Hundreds of C-47 transports drone across the English Channel in tight formation, carrying more than 13,000 paratroopers of the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions toward the coast of Normandy. Their mission is the hidden half of D-Day. While the world watches the beaches, the airborne is supposed to land inland during the night, seizing causeways, bridges, and crossroads so that German reinforcements can't reach the shore and push the invasion back into the sea. Inside Funk's aircraft, the men sit in 2 rows, buried under their gear. A paratrooper on this jump carries a staggering load: weapon, ammunition, grenades, rations, entrenching tool, first aid kit, reserve chute. So much weight that some men have to be pulled to their feet. Funk carries a Thompson submachine gun, the weapon that will follow him through the entire war. Then the coast slides beneath them, and the night explodes. German anti-aircraft fire comes up in streams, glowing tracers hosing through the formations, shells bursting close enough to slap the aircraft sideways. Pilots do what terrified men do. They speed up, they dive, they swerve. Formations that were supposed to deliver whole battalions onto single drop zones shatter apart in the darkness. When the green lights come on, the paratroopers of the 82nd jump into pure chaos. They come down everywhere except where they're supposed to. Into flooded fields, where men sink under their equipment and drown in water 3 feet deep, into hedgerows and orchards and village squares. Some sticks land almost on top of German positions and are fighting before they're out of their harnesses. Funk hits the ground hard, somewhere in the Black French countryside, miles from his drop zone, alone, deep in enemy territory. No company, no battalion, just a compass, a weapon, and a direction. This is the moment the army had no way to train for. Thousands of scattered paratroopers alone in the dark, each one deciding what kind of soldier he's going to be. Some hide, some wander, and some start walking toward the sound of the mission. Funk starts walking. Within hours, he begins collecting strays. A trooper here, 2 more there. Men from different companies, different regiments, some of them from units he's never heard of. None of them know where they are. All of them are looking for someone who sounds like he has a plan. The short sergeant with the Thompson sounds like he has a plan. The group grows to 18 men, and Funk takes responsibility for every one of them. For days, he leads them through German-held Normandy, a landscape of hedgerows so thick that visibility drops to yards, where every sunken lane can hide a machine gun team. They move carefully, mostly at night. They skirt German positions when they can, and shoot their way through when they can't, and through all of it, Funk insists on taking the most dangerous position himself, out front, scouting the route with his own eyes before he lets his men follow. Understand what's being asked of a man in that role. The lead scout is the one who finds the enemy, usually by being the first man the enemy sees. Funk could have rotated the job. He never does. When the group finally reaches American lines, Funk delivers all 18 men. Everyone he collected in the dark of June 6th walks out alive. The Army awards him the Silver Star, the nation's third highest decoration for gallantry, along with a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart before Normandy is done. For most soldiers, that's a lifetime's worth of valor in a single campaign. For Leonard Funk, it's the opening chapter. Part 4, Holland. 4 Men Against the Guns, September 17th, 1944. A Sunday afternoon, and the skies over the Netherlands fill with aircraft from horizon to horizon. This is Operation Market Garden, the largest airborne operation ever attempted. 3.5 divisions of Allied paratroopers, more than 34,000 men, dropping in broad daylight to seize a corridor of bridges through Holland. If every bridge falls and the ground column arrives on schedule, the Allies will vault the Rhine and drive into Germany's industrial heart. Some optimists are saying the war could be over by Christmas. The plan is a chain, and a chain needs every link. The British 1st Airborne takes the farthest bridge at Arnhem and lands, through catastrophic intelligence failure, nearly on top of 2 SS Panzer divisions that are refitting in the area. Over 9 days, the British division is torn to pieces. Fewer than a quarter of its men escape. A bridge too far will become the shorthand for the whole tragedy. The 82nd Airborne draws the middle of the corridor, the bridges and high ground around Nijmegen and Groesbeek. This time the division jumps in daylight, and the drop is far cleaner than Normandy. Funk lands with his company, and the 508th moves fast to take its objectives. Then Funk sees a problem that isn't on his map. Not far from the landing zones, a German anti-aircraft position has opened fire. Multiple 20mm flak guns, weapons that fire explosive shells by the hundreds per minute. And they're not shooting at fighters, they're shooting at the gliders. The gliders are the second wave of any airborne operation. Big, slow, unarmed aircraft made of wood and canvas, hauling in the things paratroopers can't jump with. Jeeps, anti-tank guns, ammunition, medics, reinforcements. A glider under fire from 20mm cannons isn't in a battle, it's in an execution. Every minute those guns keep firing, men are dying in the air with no way to fight back. The gun position sits on defended ground, protected by roughly 20 German soldiers. Crews plus security dug in behind cover. Funk has himself and 3 men. Military doctrine says an attacker needs 3-to-1 odds to take a prepared position. Funk is looking at odds of 1 to 5 in the wrong direction against emplaced automatic cannons. The textbook answer is to report the position, mark it, and wait for support. The gliders don't have time for the textbook. Funk leads his 3 troopers straight into the position. They close the distance fast, hit the security element before it can organize, and roll through the gun pits one after another. When it's over, the crews are dead or captured, and all of the flak guns stand silent. Overhead, the gliders keep coming, and now they land. For that action, Leonard Funk receives the Charterwerf received the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest American decoration for valor, 1 step below the Medal of Honor. Stop and take stock of where this man is by the fall of 1944. A Silver Star from Normandy, a Distinguished Service Cross from Holland, Purple Hearts accumulating. The quiet clerk from the Steel Valley now owns 2 of the rarest combat decorations his country can give. And the men of Company C have started to understand that their first sergeant is something out of the ordinary. None of them can guess that his defining moment is still ahead, and none of them can guess it will begin with the German Army's last great gamble. Part 5. The Bulge and the Field at Malmedy. December 16, 1944. In the fog-choked forest of the Ardennes, along a stretch of front the Allies consider so quiet they use it to rest exhausted divisions and break in green ones, the ground begins to shake. Hitler has spent months secretly massing his last reserves, hundreds of thousands of men and well over 1,000 tanks, for one final throw of the dice in the West. The plan: smash through the thin American lines in the Ardennes, race across the Meuse, and seize the vital port of Antwerp, splitting the British and American armies and forcing the Western Allies to negotiate. It is a fantasy built on desperation, but in its first days, it works terrifyingly well. The blow lands on some of the weakest sectors of the entire front. Whole regiments are overrun in the fog. Thousands of stunned American soldiers surrender. The German spearheads punch a bulge 50 miles deep into the Allied line, and the greatest battle in the history of the United States Army begins. A fight that will cost America roughly 89,000 casualties. The 82nd Airborne is resting near Reims, in France, absorbing replacements after Holland, when the emergency orders arrive. The division is thrown into trucks and rushed north through the night to help hold the crumbling shoulder of the penetration. The paratroopers go into the line short of winter clothing, short of ammunition, short of everything except experience, and the weather becomes an enemy of its own. This is one of the most brutal winters Europe has seen in years. Snow lies waist deep in the fields, temperatures plunge far below freezing, men lose feet to frostbite and trench foot, weapons freeze, wounded soldiers who might survive their wounds die of exposure instead, because the cold kills quietly and never sleeps. Then, one day into the offensive, something happens that changes the emotional temperature of the entire American army. December 17th, near a crossroads outside the Belgian town of Malmedy, a lightly armed American convoy, artillery observers, drivers, technicians, collides with the armored spearhead of Kampfgruppe Peiper, a battle group of the 1st SS Panzer Division. Against tanks, the Americans have no chance. Over 100 of them surrender. The SS herds the prisoners into a snowy field beside the road, and then the SS opens fire on them. Machine guns rake the crowd of unarmed men. Soldiers who run are shot down. Afterward, SS troopers walk among the fallen, firing pistol shots into anyone who moves. 84 American prisoners of war are murdered in that field. The only reason the world learns the truth quickly is that dozens of survivors play dead in the freezing snow, lying motionless for hours among the bodies of their friends, and escape after dark to reach American lines. The story of the Malmedy massacre tears through the front faster than any official report. Within days, nearly every American soldier in the Ardennes has heard some version of it. The Germans are executing prisoners. Something fundamental shifts. Surrender had always been the grim safety valve of war, the thing a soldier could do when the situation became truly hopeless. Malmedy poisons that. Across the bulge, American soldiers make private vows, and some units make open ones. They will not be taken alive by the SS, and some will take no SS prisoners in return. First Sergeant Leonard Funk hears about the field at Malmedy, like everyone else. He has been at war for 7 months. He has buried friends in Normandy and Holland. But this is a different kind of knowledge. The knowledge that raising your hands might simply be choosing where you die. Somewhere in that frozen December, Funk settles a question in his own mind, quietly and permanently. He will not surrender. Not to anyone, not ever. 6 weeks later, a German officer with a machine pistol is going to test that decision. Part 6. Holzheim. Clerks with rifles. By late January 1945, the bulge has been beaten flat. The German offensive is broken, its spearheads destroyed or in retreat, and the Allies are grinding forward through the same frozen forests, taking back every village that was lost and paying for each one. On January 29th, Company C of the 508th receives its objective for the day, the Belgian village of Holzheim, to Wijk, held by German troops who have no intention of leaving quietly. There's just one problem, and it's a big one. Company C barely exists anymore. Weeks of winter combat have bled the unit white. Riflemen are gone, killed, wounded, evacuated with frozen feet. Officers are gone too. The company's executive officer is among the dead. The man now carrying the executive officer's responsibilities isn't an officer at all. He's the first sergeant, Leonard Funk. Funk looks at the roster and does the arithmetic. The numbers say Company C cannot take a defended village. There simply aren't enough trigger pullers. So Funk goes looking for more. In the last place anyone would think to look. He walks into the company's rear area where the headquarters soldiers work. The clerks, the cooks, the supply men, the drivers. Men whose war is fought with typewriters and ration crates. Men who went through basic training years ago and haven't aimed a rifle in anger since. And the former clerk from Braddock, Pennsylvania, the man the army once looked at and saw a typist, tells them to draw weapons and ammunition. Today, everybody is infantry. There's a strange poetry in it that Funk probably never says out loud. He knows exactly what these men are because he was one of them, and he knows something the rest of the army tends to forget. The distance between a clerk and a soldier is leadership, nothing more. He forms them into a makeshift assault platoon and moves out. The approach march to Holzheim is a nightmare before a single shot is fired. 15 miles, waist-deep snow, a wind-driven blizzard cutting visibility to almost nothing, in cold that turns sweat to ice inside a man's uniform. German artillery searches the route as they move, shells crashing into the drifts. Every mile, the cooks and typists behind Funk have 100 reasons to believe they don't belong out here. Funk gives them one reason to keep going. He never stops walking, and he never leaves the front of the column. They reach Holzheim, and Funk sends his scratch platoon into the assault. The fight is house to house, the ugliest kind of combat there is. 15 buildings and Germans defending them with rifles, machine pistols, and grenades. Room by room, doorway by doorway, Funk's borrowed soldiers clear them all. When the shooting fades, the makeshift platoon has taken its section of the village and rounded up roughly 30 German prisoners, and Funk hasn't lost a single man doing it. On the far side of Holzheim, another American element bags 50 more prisoners. The two groups are merged, about 80 Germans herded into the yard of a farmhouse near the edge of the village. And now Funk faces the kind of decision that never makes it into recruiting posters. The village isn't fully secure. There are still Germans holding out in scattered pockets, still shooting. Every rifle Funk has needs to be in that fight. 80 prisoners need guarding, and after weighing men he doesn't have, Funk can spare exactly 4. 4 guards, 80 prisoners. It's a terrible ratio and Funk knows it, but war is a business of bad options. He posts the 4 men, tells them help will come as soon as it can, and heads back into the village to finish the battle. He has no way of knowing that the most dangerous 60 seconds of the entire war, his war, anyone's war, is now less than an hour away. Part 7. The Trap. While Company C fights through the far end of Holzheim, shapes move through the blowing snow on the village edge. A German combat patrol is working its way in, and they are dressed for the weather in a way that turns out to be lethal. White snow capes pulled over their field gray. In a blizzard, at any distance, a man in a white cape is just a man-shaped blur. American winter gear looks nearly identical. Friend and enemy dissolve into the same pale silhouette. The 4 American guards see figures approaching through the snow and hesitate. 1 heartbeat, maybe 2, trying to identify them. That hesitation is all the patrol needs. The Germans are on them before a shot can be fired. The guards are overpowered, stripped of their weapons, and forced to their knees in the snow. And then the patrol does the arithmetic Funk was dreading. They turn 80 docile prisoners back into 80 soldiers. The stacked American confiscated weapons come back out. Rifles return to hands that carried them this morning. In the space of a few minutes, the farmyard transforms from a holding pen into an assembly area. 90 armed Germans, with an officer taking charge, organizing them with real urgency. Because the officer understands the opportunity perfectly. Company C is scattered across Holzheim, oriented outward, absorbed in mopping up. Nobody is watching the farmyard. If he forms his 90 men quickly and strikes the Americans from behind, he won't just escape. He'll shatter the company that captured him. It would flip the entire day's battle in minutes. He is placing his men, assigning sectors, preparing the blow. That is the exact moment First Sergeant Leonard Funk comes walking around the corner of the farmhouse. He isn't expecting trouble. He's doing what good NCOs do, checking on his people, making sure the 4 guards are holding up, seeing whether reinforcements have arrived yet. His Thompson hangs from his shoulder on its sling, muzzle down. Routine. Then the scene in the farmyard hits him all at once. His guards, kneeling, hands behind their heads. The prisoners, not sitting in the snow under watch, but standing, moving, organized, and armed. 90 men and every eye in the yard swinging toward him. The German officer reacts instantly. He sees the stripes, recognizes a senior sergeant, and closes the distance in a few fast strides. The muzzle of his MP40 machine pistol jams hard into Funk's stomach. He shouts in Funk's face, a command obviously, surrender. Weapon on the ground, now. There's just one hitch. Leonard Funk doesn't understand a single word of German. The officer shouts again, louder, the veins standing out in his neck, and Funk stands there with a submachine gun boring into his gut, doing the math a professional soldier can't help doing. 90 enemies, half already armed, the rest arming. His own men on their knees. 1 other American beside him as helpless as he is. No cover, no backup, no move on the board. Every rational voice in the universe says the same thing. Raise your hands. But rattling around in Funk's head is a field near Malmedy, 6 weeks earlier. 84 Americans who raised their hands, and the snow that turned red anyway. And underneath that memory sits the vow he made to himself in December. He is not going to surrender, which leaves the question of what exactly a man does with a gun in his stomach and 90-to-1 odds. What Leonard Funk does next has never been fully explained, not by historians and not entirely by Funk himself. He starts to laugh. Part 8. 45 seconds. The laugh comes up out of him and doesn't stop. Picture it from the German officer's side. You have total control of the situation. You outnumber the enemy 90-1. Your weapon is pressed against his body. You have given a direct order at the top of your lungs, twice. And this small American sergeant is standing in front of you, laughing, actually laughing, doubling over with it, calling back over his shoulder to his kneeling men that he can't understand a word you're saying. Nothing in any army's training covers this. Prisoners plead, prisoners freeze. Prisoners obey. Prisoners do not find you funny. The officer's fury climbs. He screams the order again. Funk laughs harder. And now, incredibly, the absurdity infects the yard itself. Here and there among the German ranks, soldiers begin to chuckle at the spectacle of their purple-faced officer being laughed at by his own prisoner. Discipline wobbles, attention drifts. The entire formation, keyed up to launch an ambush, is now watching a comedy. Was it deliberate? Funk would later say he genuinely couldn't stop, that something about being screamed at in a language he didn't speak simply struck him as ridiculous, and the laughter took over. Maybe that's the whole truth. Maybe stress cracked open some strange valve in his brain, or maybe somewhere beneath the laughter, the tactical part of Leonard Funk, the part that had been fighting for 8 months straight, understood exactly what the laughter was buying him. Confusion, hesitation, seconds. Because while he laughs, Funk begins to move. Slowly, unthreateningly, the motion of a man complying at last. His hand drifts up to the sling of his Thompson. He starts easing the weapon off his shoulder, nice and gradual, exactly the way a beaten soldier hands over his gun. The German officer watches and reads it the way Funk needs him to read it. The American has finally come to his senses. The standoff is ending. The prisoner is disarming. The Thompson comes off the shoulder. And then it doesn't stop moving. In one continuous blur, sling to grip to muzzle on target, Funk whips the weapon level and fires. The Thompson submachine gun throws heavy .45 caliber slugs at a rate of hundreds of rounds per minute, and at a range of inches, there is no such thing as a survivable burst. The German officer takes the full stream through the torso and is dead before his knees buckle. Funk doesn't pause. He can't. The instant that first round left the barrel, he crossed the line with no way back. It's everyone in this farmyard, or him. He pivots, walking fire across the nearest armed Germans. The muzzle flash strobing against the gray afternoon. Men drop, men dive. Spent brass rains into the snow, hissing where it lands, and through the hammering of his own weapon, Funk is roaring at his 4 kneeling men. Get their weapons! Get their weapons! The guards come off their knees like sprinters. Dead men's rifles are lying everywhere, and suddenly the arithmetic of the farmyard starts to change. 4 unarmed prisoners become 4 riflemen. Fire starts coming from a second direction, then a third. Funk's bolt slams home on an empty magazine. The most dangerous instant of his life. A Thompson reload takes seconds, and seconds are exactly what 90 men need to kill one. But this is where the 10,000 repetitions of training either save you or don't. Magazine out, magazine in, bolt back. His hands run the sequence without consulting his brain, and the weapon is roaring again almost before the Germans register that it stopped. Almost, not entirely. Return fire cracks through the yard now, wild, but real. A bullet finds the American soldier standing near Funk and kills him. The only American to die in the farmyard. Rounds snap past Funk's head close enough to feel. He keeps firing, keeps moving, keeps shouting. For the 90 Germans, the world has inverted in the span of a single magazine. Their commander is dead in the snow. Their carefully organized ambush has dissolved into a crossfire. The man they had utterly beaten 30 seconds ago is somehow attacking them. And every second, more American weapons join in. No one is giving orders. No one knows who's in charge. And a soldier who doesn't know who's in charge does the one thing that requires no orders. Rifles start hitting the snow. Hands start going up. First a few, then dozens, the collapse feeding on itself. When the firing stops, the farmyard is transformed. 21 German soldiers are dead, the officer among them. Roughly 24 more are wounded. The remainder, still more than 40 armed, able-bodied men, stand with their hands raised, surrendering to a first sergeant and a handful of guards they outnumber 10 times over. By most reconstructions, the entire action, from the first burst to the last raised hands, takes well under a minute. Leonard Funk stands in the middle of it, vapor curling off the muzzle of his Thompson, and looks around at the wreckage of the ambush that was supposed to destroy his company. According to the men who were there, his verdict on the whole affair is one flat, disgusted sentence. That's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Part 9. The Rose Garden. What follows is almost strange in its normalcy. The surviving prisoners are marched to the rear. Under a guard detail considerably larger than 4 men this time, Holzheim is secured. Company C, which never learned how close it came to being annihilated from behind, moves on to the next village, the next objective, the next fight. Funk files his report and gets back to work. But a story like this cannot stay contained. It races through the 508th, then through the whole 82nd Airborne. The first sergeant, who stood with a machine pistol in his belly, laughed in the German's face and gunned his way out of 90-1 odds. Veterans, men who have seen everything the war has to offer, hear it and shake their heads. The Medal of Honor recommendation climbs the chain of command, and at every level, the reaction is the same. The facts are attested by witnesses. The odds are documented. The outcome is beyond argument. The citation itself reads like fiction. A lone soldier, ordered to surrender at gunpoint, who pretended to comply, then in one lightning motion brought his weapon to bear, killed the enemy officer, and rallied his disarmed comrades to break an entire enemy force. September 5th, 1945. The war's over. Germany surrendered in May, Japan just days ago. At the White House, President Harry S. Truman drapes the pale blue ribbon of the Medal of Honor around the neck of a fighter. He did what the situation required. Nothing more. Leonard Alfred Funk Jr. died of cancer on November 20th, 1992, at the age of 76. He was laid to rest with full honors at Arlington National Cemetery, among the honored dead of every American war. At the time of his passing, he was the last living Medal of Honor recipient from the 82nd Airborne's Second World War roster. His name endures in scattered places, if you know to look. A physical training facility at Fort Bragg, today Fort Liberty, home of the Airborne, carries it. So does a stretch of Pennsylvania highway near where he grew up, and a post office in McKeesport dedicated in his honor. Small monuments for a man who never wanted large ones. And yet, ask most Americans to name a Medal of Honor hero of World War II, and you'll hear Audie Murphy. Maybe Alvin York from the war before. Almost no one names the little first sergeant from Braddock. Leonard Funk remains what he was in life. Quiet, undersized, and catastrophically underestimated. So what do we actually take from a farmyard in Belgium 80 years later? Start with this. Every measurable factor in that yard said Leonard Funk should have died or surrendered. Numbers, firepower, position, surprise. The Germans held all of it. The only thing Funk held was the space between his ears, and it turned out that was the decisive terrain. Because the laugh, whatever its true origin, did something no weapon could. It broke the script. The German officer had a plan for a prisoner who obeyed, and a plan for a prisoner who resisted. He had no plan whatsoever for a prisoner who found him hilarious. And in the gap between what he expected and what he got, his mind stalled. Just long enough for a Thompson to come off a shoulder. Then remember why Funk refused the rational choice in the first place. Malmedy taught him that surrender could be a death sentence with extra steps. His men, the 4 in the snow, and the whole company fighting blind on the far side of the village, meant that giving up was never really giving up just himself. Funk didn't gamble because he was fearless. He gambled because he was a 5'5" paratrooper from the Pennsylvania Steel Valley. Truman, himself an artillery veteran of the First World War, has a habit of telling Medal of Honor recipients the same remarkable thing. And he says it to Funk. He would rather have that medal than be President of the United States. Stand back and tally what Leonard Funk carried home from Europe. The Medal of Honor for Holzheim. The Distinguished Service Cross for silencing the flak guns in Holland. The Silver Star for bringing 18 lost men out of German-held Normandy. The Bronze Star. 3 Purple Hearts. Wounded 3 separate times, and back in the fight after each one. Add the honors of grateful allies. Decorations from France, from Belgium, and from the Netherlands, including one of the highest military honors the Dutch can bestow. Put it all together, and the record is unmatched. Leonard Funk stands as the most decorated American paratrooper of the Second World War. 140 pounds, 5'5". A Depression-era clerk the Army almost filed behind a desk. Part 10, the quiet after here is where the story takes its final turn. And in its own way, it's as remarkable as the farmyard, because Leonard Funk comes home and then he simply goes back to work. No book deal, no speaking tours, no trading the Medal of Honor for a political career or a payday, though the offers and opportunities are there for any man wearing that ribbon. Funk returns to Pennsylvania, marries, raises 2 daughters, and takes a job with the Department of Veterans Affairs. Think about what that job actually is. Paperwork, claims, files, regulations, the same patient, invisible clerical work he was doing before the Army ever found him. Except now every file is a veteran. A man missing a leg who can't get his benefits approved. a widow lost in the bureaucracy, a soldier whose paperwork burned somewhere and who needs someone on the inside willing to fight for him. For roughly 27 years, that someone is Leonard Funk. He builds a full career at the VA, rising to lead a division of the Pittsburgh Regional Office, living modestly in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, a working-class town within sight of the same river valley where he was born. The most decorated paratrooper of the war spends the rest of his working life making sure other veterans get what their country owes them. And he almost never speaks about the war. The medals stay put away. When someone learns who he is and asks about Holtzheim, about the laugh, about the 90 Germans, Funk deflects with a shrug, and some version of the same quiet answer. Understood the stakes better than the man holding the gun. And maybe the deepest lesson is the one hiding in his whole biography. The Army looked at Leonard Funk in 1941 and saw a clerk. The Germans looked at him in 1945 and saw a prisoner. Both were looking at the outside of the man, and both were wrong in ways that changed history. Courage doesn't come in a standard size. It doesn't announce itself. Sometimes it spends decades behind a desk, before and after its one impossible hour. And sometimes, at the moment of maximum darkness, it sounds exactly like laughter. If this story moved you, share it. Because men like Leonard Funk didn't tell their own stories, which makes it our job to tell them. Subscribe for more true accounts of the soldiers' history overlooked, and tell us in the comments whose story we should uncover next. Some heroes are carved in marble. This one filed paperwork in Pittsburgh. And once in the snow of Belgium, he laughed at 90 armed men and won.